So welcome to our session on elementary remote teaching and learning. And I know it's been really difficult these last few months. All of a sudden, pow, you're right out there, and it's like, and we're talking about read alouds. You talk about your maker spaces, and you talk about digital citizenship, and all of a sudden, it's like, okay, now take all that and bring it home and do it. So I think now in the fall we can have a nice fresh start, learn from what would happen in the spring, and apply that to now the fall. So I'm going to begin with sharing my screen. I'm going to start right here. And so I just want to thank the New Jersey Association for School Librarians, first of all, for sponsoring this event. So tweet them, thank them. Lisa connected us together, and New Jersey Association of School Librarians is actually sponsoring by providing this Zoom for all of us. We were initially had 100 people signed up, and it grew. We have 500 tickets out there and actually 600 left on the wait list. I couldn't handle all of it. So we've had we've had groups of like 200 to 300, but I expect that out on a Saturday. But at least we have a bigger room than the 100 I was offering. So we've had some really great conversations. So I'm just going to put present, just to let everyone know who's coming in now that Shannon unfortunately will not be joining us. There was a very bad storm in Iowa. I don't know if you've heard about it, and her family's farm has been affected by it. Her daughter Brianna, they had a tree for her planted either when she was born or on her christening, and they've had to take that down. Eric, of course, is going to cut up into pieces and make something really awesome with it. But our hearts go out to Shannon and her family. So if you can just tag her on Twitter, show her some love, I think she'd really appreciate that. Really appreciate that right now, as they're rebuilding. So, and everyone out in Iowa, we're going to give you a shout out. Our hearts are with you. So on that note, we have Nikki Robertson, Tom Bover, and Anastasia Hanneken talking about elementary teaching best tips and practices. So I will go to the next slide. And Nikki, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Nikki Robertson. I'm currently the project coordinator for digital and distance learning for the Education Service Center in Texas. Housed in Austin, I serve 60 school districts, 19 private and charter schools, and 8 colleges and universities. So the switch to digital has been quite interesting since my job is digital and distance learning for all of those places. So
Wow.
having fun with that. Also, I'm a current PhD student and retired librarian, and super happy to be here.
Awesome. And thank you so much. I know time is very dear to you. Now, this title, was that your title before the pandemic, or was this a new title?
That was my title when I took the job a year ago. Little did I know.
Wow. And like the forethought that they had, and the perfect person to have that position in this time.
I
You
have
must
an
be awesome.
amazing team. I work with an amazing team. I cannot take credit for all of it. It's definitely a team effort, just like here.
And Nikki knows how to roll up her sleeves because she is literally helping to shelve books at this time, and she's exhausted. So I thank you. We also have Tom Bober.
Hi, good morning or afternoon. I guess it's just afternoon for me. I am an elementary school librarian in the suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri. I also just took on the role of library coordinator for our small district. And probably if you see me out there on Twitter or anywhere else, I'm usually talking about historical documents and primary sources, and that's kind of my passion project that I like to really involve my students in. So I'll get a chance to talk a little bit about what that looks like virtually today. And I would also say that I feel like I'm still figuring a lot of things out. I just mentioned earlier that yesterday was our first day back, and there were still decisions being made by committee as of yesterday, and we start school in a week. So this hour is meant to make me feel like I know what I'm talking about. So Christina, thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. I mean, the honesty, because you know what, we are all in this together and everyone feels the same way. Tom Heck at Makey Makey, I actually took a Makey Makey virtual class over the spring. Tom Heck said, you know, it's like jumping out of an airplane with the parachute and thread and you're sewing it as you're jumping. And that's what I feel like. And we have Anastasia Hanneken from New
Hi.
Jersey.
Yay. Hi, I'm Anastasia Hanneken. I feel a little out of my league here with some of the other people on this panel, but I am a brand new elementary librarian with Neptune Township School District in New Jersey. We are right outside of Asbury Park, right along the coast. So I'm about a mile from the beach at my school. So very excited about that. I have over 13 years experience as a school library media specialist at all levels, but I really love elementary. That's really where my heart is. A lot of experience with integrating maker spaces and STEM in the library media center. So excited to be here.
Well, Anastasia, I'm so glad you're here. And now you don't have to travel to Long Island to participate.
And I
Anastasia came.
also wanted to give a quick shout out to Najazel because that's a big part of my professional life. I was actually the vice president with them for a short period of time and been very involved with Najazel. So absolutely love that organization. Just a wonderful, great organization to be part of.
I will tell you, there's some amazing things going on in New Jersey in library and technology, and I'm so glad you're here.
I am too.
So we are going to share some ideas for remote learning for elementary kids. So they could be ideas, they could be resources, they could be lessons, but everyone, we're going to have this awesome panel share their expertise. So Nikki, what are you going to share with us?
Well, the tool that I'll be sharing in my 3 slides is you. Adorable, sweet you. So regardless of the way that schooling proceeds this year, decision makers must be aware of the importance of our role as school librarians. We serve as leaders in the classroom library. We serve as collaborators, both online and in face-to-face instruction. We advocate to ensure students and families have access to physical and digital books. We serve as technology mentors and troubleshooters. We provide virtual book clubs and other club sponsorships. We connect classrooms with the world, connect teachers, students, and parents with pertinent learning resources, and provide valuable professional development opportunities, and so much more. The key to efficiently conveying the message of the expansive wealth of services offered by full-time certified school librarians is to clearly know and be able to communicate our why.
Wow. I'm overwhelmed by all those things you said, and you're right. We do all those things, and you can't, you bring up I was at a math conference once presenting. Yes, and I think you should go to other conferences besides library conferences to share and advocate. So I was at a math conference once, and I was, speaking to someone, and I said, "Oh, I'm a school librarian." She's like, "Why are you here?" I'm like, "Well, because I want to share what I can do." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, my colleague works in our school library. She's fabulous. She connects books to the kids and activities." I'm like, "Oh, is she a school librarian?" No, she's, they just put her in the library. And I said, "Well, we do that."
Yeah.
We do that. And she kind of was taken back. And I said, you're basically telling me that, all these great things that, your colleague is doing, but where's your school librarian? And I think she wasn't expecting that response from that.
Right. Would you mind clicking?
Sure.
To advance it to the next slide?
Yep.
Yeah. So speaking of that why, and I think what you added there was really just essential and important, but going right into that, why are we essential to that school community, both pre, current, and post-COVID, hopefully? So your message has to be clear, it has to be concise, it has to be easily digestible, And especially during this high time of stress when administrators and other stakeholders and decision makers are burdened with the concerns of all the educators in the school, all the parents, all the teachers, the community members, the students. They need something quick and simple to understand. Here, Mary Chappelle, school librarian, said, if you value your job, you have to step up and prove that you're valuable. If you'll advance to the next slide, Christine.
Sure.
So we've all probably heard of the State of America's Libraries report that revealed from over 60 education library research studies that there's clear evidence that school library programs staffed by qualified school librarians have a positive impact on student academic achievement. Our administrators and other decision makers simply don't have the time to review all 60 of these studies. But even more important than that, the studies in this report are not about you and what you do in the library for your school. So it's important that you address what you are doing in your school to positively impact student achievement. That's where you must step up and be able to demonstrate, document, and convey your worth. And if you will click, I first learned one way to do this is through annual reports. So telling stories about your library through social media is a great way to start, but then showing that student achievement connection to the library through an annual report is really important, because annual reports are a powerful storytelling tool that grab the attention of the administrator and other stakeholders. Annual reports share data beyond just book circulation and class visits, data that shares how your work directly supports teacher and impacts student achievement. And I first learned about creating annual reports from Jennifer Lagarde, AKA Library Girl. And she stressed and continues to stress the critical importance for school librarians to tell their stories with a bang through annual reports. So I suggest that you look at Jennifer Lagarde's blog and see some of the sample annual reports that she has there that have been crowdsourced. Thank you.
Awesome. All right.
So this one's my slide. I want to connect though with something that Nikki said as I'm listening to her. I completely agree. This idea of telling your story and letting people know the impact that you have with your students and with your staff is so critically important. And as Nikki was saying this, I was thinking, you know, my reality before mid-March was that I was in a school that building, a physical space that was an open concept. We have no walls higher than 4-foot lockers. My library was in the very center of that school. And it was really hard not to let people see what you were doing. And so now I'm faced with very much a flip of that. And that is that it's much more of a challenge that parents and students and teachers know what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. And so keeping that at the forefront of our minds, I think, you know, I can't agree more, is so critical. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, and we are going virtual, my district is going virtual through at least the first quarter, and we have a cadre of about 25% of our elementary students that are going to be virtual by their parent selection through the first semester. And so one of the things I've been thinking about is this idea of connecting and connection. We have students that I would see, of course, every day. We have students that, I've got students who couldn't walk through the library without a fist bump or a hug or something like that. I have students who couldn't walk down the hall with a classmate without holding their hand. There was a lot of connection that was going on. And as we're all now physically separated out, one thing I've been thinking a lot about is how do we put some of that connection back into place? So my slides that I mocked up for today really all have that theme going on, this idea of connection. And so one way that we're going to start the year virtually is working in the library for students to connect with each other. And I know that our teachers are doing a lot of this too. This is a mandate that I love that's coming down from our school and our district, is take time to build those relationships. And the relationship that we build in the library, physical space or virtual space, is who we are as readers. I feel like I know my students as readers better than their classroom teachers in some ways, because I've grown up with them, they've grown up with me during their elementary time as readers. And so we're going to start out the year connecting with each other as readers, talking about, and you can see here just through the use of Flipgrid, ideas and topics around favorite books and favorite authors and favorite genres and characters and types of nonfiction, giving multiple entry points for our students to come in and share who they are and learn about who the other students are, or continue to grow the learning around who the other students are as readers. And I think for our library, for our virtual space right now, that's going to be a really positive way to continue what we've been building upon for years in our library.
You know, I think back and I think, you know, if this pandemic had happened, you know, years and years and years ago, we wouldn't have these awesome tech tools like Flipgrid and other tech tools to connect our students. It would be, you know, the dial-up phone, you know, and they would be, you know, using the long cord, and then their sibling would eventually get on the other line. But that would be it. We wouldn't have the live YouTube. We wouldn't have Twitter. We wouldn't have all these things. And could you imagine how much more disconnected our kids would feel? These tech tools help bring us together.
And I've talked to, and I mean, to the flip side of that, Christina, I've talked to librarians. In fact, I think Allie's on your panel in the next session is one of them I was talking to. And just, we do still have students who don't have reliable connections and devices and those types of things. So there's still struggles. Again, I can only speak from the perspective that I'm kind of in right now. And we're blessed enough to be in a situation where we weren't a one-to-one at the elementary level, but we were able to make that happen. And then we were able to work with families who did not have reliable internet service for their children, and make those things happen too. So wow. I'm in a very lucky situation exactly to do what you said, which is to use and utilize those tools to their most effective nature to make those connections.
That's a really good point. I'm just going to run in here real quick, and I'm going to just mute. I think that was the person I had to mute.
Sounded like the same person from last session.
Yeah. Oh, you were in the last session.
I was.
So Anastasia, let's see what you have.
So in addition to my librarian background, I'm also a technology specialist, and that's been really super helpful during this time. The last position I was in, I was teaching in person until the pandemic hit. So it was very helpful when we were just all 100% remote. This new district at the moment, New Jersey's going kind of through a thing right now where we're trying to figure out exactly what we're doing, but the current plan is our students are going to be going, having a hybrid plan. So they've divided the kids up into two groups, and one will go 2 days a week, and then the other group will go the other 2 days a week, and the Wednesday is used as a clean day in between. So as the librarian, I'm actually not doing any in-person classes. I'm going to be doing 100% remote classes, and each librarian is just taking one grade for the entire school. My job is to be helping wherever I'm needed. It might be helping, making sure a kid is social distancing in the hallway. It might be getting lunches because they can't eat lunch in the cafeteria. It might be substituting for a teacher who's out because they're sick. It could be any number of things. So tell my principal whatever you need. But I'm also kind of feeling like my role is going to be helping the teachers incorporate the technology. So this is one thing that I've always, I would say always, but in like the last 5 years or so I've started doing is incorporating HyperDocs. So there is a link on this slide to the official HyperDocs site. It's not my idea, but I heard about it at an ISTE conference and just sort of ran with it. I create HyperDocs on slides. I just think it makes a little bit more visually appealing to students, but I've seen plenty of them just created on Google Docs. And if you're not familiar with HyperDocs, what it really is it's a digital lesson plan, which creates a learning plan for your students, and it basically puts everything in one spot. So it begins with exploring the topic. So you might list something that, you know, like a video or anything that you can think of that would help them explore that topic. And then it gets into explaining the topic. So usually you create something within your HyperDoc that you want the students to do to explain to you that they understand whatever you're trying to teach them. And then the next part is applying something that they have to do. You can take it one step further and actually add a create. And when I add create, that's when I add in things like a choice board and things like that. So there's two on here. These are actually mine that I've created. The one is it's not a link to it. It's just the first slide from it. The one was when I did called "You Can Be an Epic Digital Citizen." And I chose that one because one of the things that my district has asked me to concentrate on is digital citizenship. It's such a big deal with the students going online, even though they are partly in person, they are going to also be doing a lot of their things remote as well. And another one was around the world with Google Earth. So there's a lot of ideas on the HyperDocs site. And if anybody wants to reach out to me on Twitter, I'm happy to share any of my slideshows my HyperDoc slideshows that I've created. So I just find it works really well, and the kids really enjoy doing them.
You know, Mickey, you know what, sometimes I have teachers, they bring me their lessons or they bring me the activities, and then I transform it into a HyperDoc. I just like, and I work with high school, I just like it having, instead of having one page with all a paragraph, I'm very into like how things look. So it should be bulleted, it should be chunked, it should be, you know, step by step. And I think that's good teaching, whether you're using a HyperDoc or not, just making it easy, not easy, the activities easy, but student friendly.
Right.
So I think what you're saying for remote learning, and you know, I will tell you, I have an 11 and 10 and 8-year-old, and whatever you can do to help make it more student friendly and remote and independent for your remote learners and in-school learners, you're going to do a really great service for your parents, because I have 3 kids at home. So, and I'm jumping from one to the other. And when I have something that's very laid out and very, you know, explained very thoroughly, even if I have to help my child do the work, at least I can say, you can work on step 1 while I help my other child with the step 2 of something else. So I really think it's a really great way to chunk it for our little learners.
Absolutely. I mean, I have 3 children as well. One in high school, and last year I had 2 in middle school. Now I have 2 in high school, and it was still a difficult thing. And I have an education background.
Yep.
I mean, I can only imagine the parents who don't have any of that kind of a background. It was still very difficult to manage our time and to just get it all done.
And I know all this takes a lot of work on the back end, but it's like group work. All of that takes work on the back end, but then when the lesson happens, the kids are doing most of the work, and that's the way it should be.
Right. Yeah.
So let's go back to Nikki.
All right. So it's funny, y'all, because Anastasia and Tom and I didn't even collaborate on what slides we were going to do and what we were going to talk about. But this next slide that I'm talking about here goes right into what Tom was talking about with focusing on connections and building those relationships. And then I think what really stood out to me with what Anastasia said is helping wherever and whenever needed. So we began by talking about being able to effectively communicate your why. So the other critical factor is to a successful library is to building those relationships. Because y'all, it doesn't matter how beautifully your library is decorated, how robust your resource collections are, the cool things that you have in your maker spaces or anything else, if no one wants to use the library or utilize you as a resource. Recently, on a school librarian's Facebook group, I saw a librarian whose administrator who had had asked her to conduct her library classes in, well, less than the traditional or conventional way because of this new school year and the mixture of remote, face-to-face, and blended learning for which we're all trying to prepare. Rather than finding a way to make this request work to her advantage and implanting positive connotations about school librarians in the memory of her administrator, this librarian dug her heels in, complained, and laid out a litany of what her true job responsibilities were. And if you'll click and advance to the next one. Doug Johnson, if you don't know him, I call him the godfather of librarians, like Joyce Lenz is the godmother of librarians. But Doug Johnson, he has a site, Blue Skunk Blog. I'd encourage you to visit it. But I really think he said it well with this quote. As librarians, we can offer the very best hammer in the world. But if your principal, your teachers, or your parents really need and want a wrench, a screwdriver, or a hacksaw, having a hammer, no matter how wonderful, it's simply immaterial. They get it that you have a great hammer, okay? It just isn't relevant or important to them, even if you think it darn well should be.
Oh my God, that is the best.
I implore you to always keep in the forefront of your mind that we, as school librarians, are a service industry. Be more than just a hammer. Offer the whole toolbox and be willing to provide the services that your patrons need.
Oh my God, that is awesome. And especially, like you said, if they need you to do something else, that's what they need you to do. And, it's not that, and a lot of things right now, it's not because we want to do them. It's because of necessity and practicality. And in the last session, Alyssa Malaspina said her word for this year is pivot. Just like from that Friends episode, pivot. Yeah. You got to pivot and you have to be flexible, but you can do it in a way that you can put those library skills in there. You could do it your way, but solve their problem.
Right.
I love this slide.
And it's not an attack on you or a misunderstanding of what librarians do.
Here.
They're desperate right now. They need your help, and they wouldn't ask you to do the things they're asking you to do if they didn't need you to do those.
Exactly.
I think to build off of what Nikki was just saying, I've also run into situations in an administrative level, and it could be building or it could be district, where to build on that idea of the hammer, you've got an administrator looking at you and asking the question, oh, you have tools? Like they just don't know what you can do or what they want you to do. And so and I know this was really kind of brought up in the last session, the advocacy session, coming to them with a plan of what you can do, but being ready to be flexible, being ready to adapt, I think is important. I went to my principal in May as we were doing our device collection at the end of the semester or at the end of the year, preparing not to come back potentially in the fall as what's happening, and said, I know you might need to use my library space for learning.
I couldn't see. I saw nothing. But
Tom, you good?
I'm back. I got muted for a second, but that's good. I'm back.
Good. I was just muted.
I said we may have to. You might have to give up my space. You might have to. I might have to give my space. And I haven't talked to her about this yet. But as we move into a hybrid model, I see a possibility where I might be asked to teach some social studies content based off of what I typically do in my library. That I might be the go-to person for that. And I'm ready for that. I'm ready, but I'm also ready to say, here's how I think it best can be done with my skill set. And as was said in the last session, here's what may be going away. And I'm okay with that. Ultimately, the administrator is going to make that decision. I'm going to advocate and do what I can what's best for students. So to continue with this idea of connecting, the one thing that we do is really regularly is connect with literature. That is when students come to the library half the time at least, if not more. That is what we are talking about. That's what they're talking about with each other. And so I want to continue to give them opportunities to learn about great literature, to get great literature. We had a huge request after our few months virtual to get print books. And so we've worked out basically like a curbside pickup model akin to what we've got around here at our restaurants that you might do to either order specific books through Destiny, or Shannon posted out as an inspiration from someone else doing book menus, and we're going to do those with Google Forms, and then contact families to say, okay, your books are ready to be picked up, and we'll get things out that way. In addition to our Sora ebook and audiobook collection and our other ebook resources that are already out there. And we're kind of getting all of those things out into students' hands. We're also starting off the year with 2 author visits. And you can see we're going to have Varian Johnson and Derek Barnes. And I think Gordon James is going to be joining Derek as well. I'm really excited about that for our K-2 students and our 3-5 students. And we're going to be joining with another school and another district to do that virtually. I'm beyond excited about making those 2 visits happen. And then the last thing that I've really been thinking about, in addition to all of this, is how I share information about books. So how do I do book talks virtually? I played around with some ideas in the spring. I want to solidify on some ideas now of how to share those out and group them by genre. And I'm going to be using a couple different formats, because at this moment, especially for our youngest learners, it's wonderful to learn new tools. But when we have tools that do similar things, and if I have a teacher that's relying heavily on one of those particular tools, I'm going to follow that teacher's lead, and I'm going to stick with probably that particular tool. I'm okay with kind of playing in different sandboxes for example, sharing out videos of book talks. I can do that in multiple ways. And I'm going to go and talk with teachers and collaborate with them on what the best way to do that will be with our students. And then the last piece that I don't think I have up there, but I was working on this morning and last night, is reader's advisory, and what that reader's advisory is going to look like. What about my students who just kind of get lost? And we do a really intensive reader's advisory where I get 2 sessions of about 20 minutes each to really get to know them even better as a reader and where they're kind of sticking right now, and then really promote books that are tailored toward them. I did some of this in the spring and virtually, and the one thing I loved so much about it is that more often than not, the parent was there in the background, and I think it helped the parent understand their child better as a reader too. One thing I did have to ask parents was not to chime in and to let me have a conversation with the student, so that the parent wasn't saying what they think they should be reading, that we were having a conversation about what that child was connecting with as a reader and in other places at their life. And I was trying to be a guide in that process. And hopefully that was a service to the parents as well. So I'm looking forward to that part of that reading connection, that literature connection again this year.
You know, you bring up a very good point with this remote learning. The home and school connection became blurred in a way. And I know for one that teachers need us at home. Teachers needed us at home to help our children. And if my kids didn't want to do their work, it didn't matter what the teacher was going to say. I had to get them to do their work. But also we needed the teachers as well to guide us. So it's that partnership which I really think will continue, and I hope will continue. Now I'm looking at the Wakelet right there. Have you used Wakelet for your book talks? Because you can use Flipgrid right in Wakelet, and I just wanted to know if you know that.
Yeah. So I will be, I'm kind of hitting, again, it's kind of depending on the grade level and where other what students have already experienced. So I don't want to throw too many new things at them at once. And so it's kind of a conversation grade level by grade level with teachers to see what tools I already know they've had experience with, and what other tools teachers are deciding to explore this year. And I'm going to follow the lead of the teachers for the most part, unless they don't have any ideas, and then I'll take the lead.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And I'm so excited about these virtual author visits.
Oh, I am too.
Very cool. So Anastasia.
Hi. So one of the things I was doing a lot in my last position once the pandemic hit was creating videos, reading books aloud, creating, how-tos for how to use different types of tech. I do this thing called Tech Bites for Teachers, where it's just a little snippet of how to use a certain tool. And so the question becomes, what do I use to record myself? We were using Screencastify quite a lot last year because they got rid of the cost of the program if you wanted to go beyond the 5 minutes. So from what I understand, they are not going to reinstate that this year, at least not at this point. So I had been looking for something earlier in the summer that I could use. So I actually found Loom and I really love it. It works very much like Screencastify. So if you've used Screencastify before, you'll have that same comfort level that you had with Loom. So it's great for asynchronous learning. You can log in with an account through Google, so that makes it nice and easy. It has both a screen recorder and a video recorder, so you can also do the half and half, or you're recording your screen, have the little picture of yourself and video of yourself in the corner. It creates a URL for your video. So that only tricky part is if you're somebody that likes to put your videos on YouTube. It's a little bit more difficult than Screencastify is. You do have to download the video to your device, and then you can send it to YouTube. There's tons of tutorials on how to do that though, and it's really not that difficult. So yeah, I mean, I'm just going with something real simple here, but the reality is most of us are going to need to have some device, whether we're creating remote lessons or we're creating things to push out to teachers. I'm going to be doing a little bit of both. So this is going to be a super helpful tool for me.
I look at that, and I personally have to try out Loom. I have that. But I think about all of the work that goes on the back end of creating these activities and lessons that, some people have this perception of, oh, teachers had it off all these months. I don't think teachers have worked so hard in all their lives. Even if you do know technology, you're still creating these things and connecting and learning. It takes a lot of time. Yeah. But I tell you, I really appreciate this because my kids had Google Meets with their teachers, which were great. And then one day I heard my son and the teacher was talking about math, and he was then in 4th grade. And I had their Google Meets written on a schedule because I had my Google Meets, and I'm like, okay, I would put clocks on it and alarms. It's yours time, it's my time. It was just like chaos. But I said, this wasn't on the list. It's not a Google Meet. He's like, no, my teacher recorded herself going through the math page. So I have to go through it and listen to her, watch her, and then I do it after. And I said, oh, thank you. Because just hearing the voice made me feel better because I felt like he wasn't so disconnected. And I think that's really important for our littles, our elementary school kids. Yeah, I can't imagine our little kids right now. Middle school and high school, that's one thing, but our kids need those hugs. So virtual hugs, those virtual high fives, your voice is so important. Your face. I saw Heather Lister put on Twitter the Bitmojis that she said, I really don't understand all the Bitmojis. Why not put our own faces? And, I thought about that. I'm like, you know what? I think school teachers, we're used to decorating our rooms, so I think it was that way to get that creativity out of decorating our room. But then I started thinking, you know what? It would be just as easy to take a picture of ourselves and remove.bg and put that in there and just have the kids see us, and recording videos with Loom, with Flipgrid, with Screencastify, anything, voice and our images, so the kids, we can connect and relate to them, is so important.
Right. And the one thing I forgot to mention is you have to either download Loom to your device or you can do a Chrome extension. I just did the Chrome extension. That's my current district is one-to-one with Chromebooks, so that's the easiest way for me, but whatever's easiest, they both work equally.
And would your kids have access to this too? Because I can see, you know, my son, his friend, they were in Google Classroom and his friend couldn't find something. So I taught my son Screencastify. And so he made his own little tutorial video and put it in Google Classroom to show his friend how to do something. And he loves also making stop animation. So he made a video of himself teaching stop animation. And I told him, you know, now they start listening to me like, what's the difference between a webinar and a meeting and a Google Meet? And I said, well, they overlap. So I said, well, you can just consider it all professional development training. So my son says, I'm doing professional development, he says. He's going in sixth grade. He goes, I'm doing professional development for my friends. And I was like, that is so cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure what my district's doing with that. I was hired like a week ago, a week from this past Thursday.
Congratulations.
Officially hired, so I was starting to think I wasn't going to even be working this year, but yeah, so I have to still find out all their protocol as far as the digital and, you know, some of the requirements the tech department has. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through just quick slides because I'm going to pop into the next session.
Right.
So Nikki, we're back to you.
Right, I'm going to finish up. I want to give kudos to Anastasia about talking about video recording, because that's really one of the big things we've been serving our teachers with where I work. That transition, I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to use Zoom, and how do I make a video recording. And then Tom, I think what you said about not offering too many tools, letting the teachers lead and then meeting their needs is so crucial. What I've heard back from teachers is, yeah, we love our librarians, but it's like a fire hose being opened up, the tools coming at us, and we're overwhelmed. We don't have time for all of that. So I see that school librarians have been presented with a very unique and hopefully a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to step up and reclaim our place. What's happening now helps us to demonstrate our worth and lead the way for our schools in whatever environment we find ourselves where teaching and learning take place. And if you'll forward to the next slide. Along this journey, we need social and emotional support from those who get us, those who understand the particular needs and concerns exclusive to school librarians. So in the words of my friend Rafron Davis, there is nothing that fuels the spirit like surrounding yourself with creative people who are willing to go to camp crazy with you. So I encourage you, especially this year, to be the calm in the chaos, to establish positive interactions, seek out student empowering activities, and build new professional relationships.
You're right. I've heard the quote of never let a good crisis go to waste. And we could really, right? Never let a good crisis go to waste. And I don't mean that in a flippant way of that this is not a very important struggle and challenge for people. And I mean on the medical side, but we can learn and grow, and that's what we need to do. From this, we get better. We get better. There's only one way to go, and it's up, and it's getting better. And we have to take advantage of this time and change things for the better.
Right.
I'll just speak real quickly about this, students connecting with the world. And what I want to do is I want to make sure, when I thought about what was going on virtually and what this was going to look like, that we didn't get rid of the things that make the library what it is. And so I mentioned earlier, we do so much with history and with looking at the past and connecting to it to understand our present. We are going to be continuing to do that. We're going to hopefully be doing a virtual visit with our local Missouri History Museum Library and Research Center. We have been working on teaching students not to write in cursive, but to read cursive so they can read historical documents. And we'll get much more deeply into the election than Grace for President, but getting into the election that will be happening in November, talking about current news and working on news literacy skills. All those things are important for who we are as a library and the experiences that our students have in our physical space. And I wanted to make sure that those things continued. And so identifying those needs first, and then starting to work backwards towards, okay, what are the tools that best work to have specific experiences virtually, is some thinking that I haven't completely done yet, but I'm looking forward to doing. And yeah, we'll leave it at that.
I think it's so important to connect students to the world and the information that they need to make informed choices, because they are our future thought leaders and change makers. Actually, you know what? They're not even our future. They are our now. They are our now, and they can make their opinions now, and they could change their opinions on new information. And we have to provide that. I never even thought of teaching kids cursive to read these documents. That's a physical a skill to read these things, and I never even thought of that. So the fact that you are bringing that up, it's important.
They do surprisingly well, especially the younger students who are working to decode anyway. They can transfer that amazingly easily to this type of text. It's surprising how well they do.
Wow. Thank you so much. And let's end with Anastasia.
Okay. So Seesaw, one of my favorite tools. I'm actually an ambassador for Seesaw, and I was just asked this morning by my supervisor if I would be willing to present on this topic to all of the specialists in the district. So brand new and already presenting. But if you're not familiar with Seesaw, it's a learning management system, very similar to Google Classroom, any other learning management system you would see. It is free, but it has an upgrade that is not free. But in my opinion, the free version, you get enough out of it that you don't have to pay for the upgraded version. So it's the thing that makes Seesaw so different from other learning management systems is it's really perfect for your littlest grade children. So I would say especially K to 2. So it can act as a learning management system, but it can also act as a portfolio. And the way it works is you can have students join by either giving them a QR code, which they can scan. You can add them yourselves, or you can share a code with them just like you would with Google Classroom. And it also has an ability for you to share a code with parents, so parents can see what their child is putting onto Seesaw. So it's very safe. It has an interface feeling almost like a social media, like Facebook or something like that. And the one thing that it has that's really neat is this is of course optional, but it has a blog feature where you can share certain things from each student's Seesaw with other classes around the world. So if you want to do something like that, you can, but again, completely optional. Some teachers just don't feel safe with that. But there's just some images on here of what it looks like, and my picture's kind of covering this up, but so it shows you can take a photograph, create a video, do a drawing, you can add things from the camera roll. So it works really well on all kinds of devices. It works really well on iPads, so if students are using mostly iPads, but it would also work well for a desktop or a Chromebook, something like that. So I really love it, and I had wished last year, the school I was working with used Canvas, and that was extremely difficult for our K through 2 level. And it was, what it was is we had Canvas at the secondary level, and we went remote. They just decided to purchase Canvas for the whole district, but all the librarians were sitting there saying, oh my gosh, I wish we could be using Seesaw right now, because it's just so much easier than what you get on some of the higher learning management systems that are out there. So if you have an opportunity, if your district will allow you to use this is a great option for your younger students.
That was actually the major problem that I had with my youngest. She was in a K through 2 building, and no fault of the teachers. In a K through 2 building, you're more of a hands-on teacher. So I understood that they didn't have the technology skills, but they would give her all these websites to go to and whatever, and they would, but there was really no way for them to check their work. And they went through iReady and they looked at her scores there, but there really was no, it was kind of like, take a picture of what you're doing and then email it to me. And I'm sitting here going, there's so many learning management systems. if you know, Google Classroom is what my sons were using in the 3 to 5 building, and I wish they had used Seesaw, because then I felt like there would have been more interaction. We can't just think about how we're going to teach. We also have to think about how the kids are going to show what they've learned, and that back and forth. So it's very important to have at least some kind of plan for some kind of way to pass back work back and forth, whatever you choose, whether it's Seesaw or something else. But again, for the littles, I think Seesaw, I agree, Anastasia, is perfect.
And they do have a whole library of activities. Now, I think if you're not paying for it, you don't get as many, but there's still pretty much in there. I mean, I personally like to do most of my own, but there are some good ideas in there, so I wouldn't just pass it by.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to go into final thoughts because I have to jump into the next session. If you have one word of advice, one quote, one nugget of inspiration, let's start with Nikki. What would you say to librarians teaching remotely, our littles?
Oh, I'm just going to go right back to Doug Johnson's quote. Don't just be a hammer, be the whole toolbox.
Yep. See what works for what the person needs, right? Not what you want to teach. Yep. Awesome. And Tom?
I think similarly, I'm a big advocate for knowing the skills that you bring to the table. We're all unique as librarians we bring different things, knowing those skills and then working to meet those needs of our students and our staff.
Awesome. And Anastasia?
I think I agree with both of what they said, but in addition to that, be flexible. I see a lot of librarians right now on social media that are up in arms about that they're not doing their regular job, and it's administrators, I feel like, are doing the best they can do.
Yes.
And they're trying to obey the guidelines and to just make it a safe environment. So unfortunately, that might mean that you're not in your regular library just doing your classes. You might be asked to do other things, and we will get through this. We're all in this together.
Right. And you said it right. They're trying to solve their problem. And isn't that advocacy? We're helping to solve that problem. It may not be advocating for libraries, but we can put those library skills in whatever we do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then the kids get even more out of it than they were even thinking they would.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to say thank you to all of our panelists. I'm going to stop sharing right now so I can give everyone a wave. I want to thank again New Jersey Association for School Librarians for sponsoring today's event. I want to thank you all for sharing your awesome work. Again, these are really, really great librarians right here. Anastasia, Nikki, and Tom. Reach out to them. They all have their strengths. They all have their passions. But you have 3 new friends here. If you've never met them before, they are just amazing. And I want to thank you for giving us your time today. I'm going to hop out into the next session. Hugs to all of you. Stay
Christina,
safe.
thank you for organizing this, and thank you for having us here today.
Awesome job. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you.
Bye-bye.